Good job. Thank you. All right. Welcome, everybody, here to this Amazing Love Sanctuary service. And I always love when we're getting ready to go online and somebody jumps on. Like, boom, they're there. And so I'm thankful that you're waiting and you're anticipating us, and I think that's important. But before we start today, I want to take a moment to remember Tyree Nichols and speak his name this morning. When he was murdered, he was on his way home from taking sunset photos at a park. He was literally 100 yards away from his parents' house when he was stopped. He was a FedEx worker and had a 4-year-old son. And we remember him today. He cried for his mother. He said, "I'm just trying to get home." He should have made it home to his mama. He should have made it home. And we know how much black life doesn't matter because we know they didn't care whether he would cry or he was gifted or wanted to make it home. They didn't care. So we remember today, we speak his name, Tyree Nichols. And we pray for his family, for his child, for that community. And so the message today is certainly timely because we should grieve. I want to open up with a prayer that we're going to read from Progressive Prayers for Progressive People. Number 7, is that right?
Number 23 on 66.
Oh, okay. I was on page 23. Good and queering God. Most of us have known some difficulties in this life. Many of us have found ourselves in innumerable circumstances. Few among us have felt the inner pain of being shunned. And yet most of us have managed to not help a person in need, even when we knew they needed it, even when we knew we could. Many of us have fallen short of lifting up someone who was feeling down, when it would have only meant slowing our own life down in order to value theirs. A few of us have been the ones who have pushed others to the outskirts of our groups and society, when a simple "come join us" could have changed a life. These things don't make us bad people. They simply make us human. We know the world is a better place when we practice taking better care of one another, particularly those who are already hurting. And we want to be those loving people who spread joy and love rather than judgment and division. May we continue to learn to be better followers of love come down. May we encourage each other to risk practicing a reckless love. And may we inspire each other to seek out those who are alone and marginalized. May we grow to be fuller reflections of the love that is planted within us. Amen. So we're glad that you're here, and I know that Reverend Joella has a timely message, and these are messages that are hard to speak from our hearts, because we speak from our own vulnerability, and anybody who knows me knows I always challenge us to speak from our vulnerability. Because it's easy as preachers, as ministers, as preachers to perform and put on a face of, I got it all together, because we think we should. It's hard to say, hey, I'm human and I hurt. My life's a wreck. And it's hard to say, I am grieving. And so Joella just recently officiated the funeral for her father. And it's difficult. I've done that myself. And for family members and my own self, other family and friends. And had to put aside my grief to do my job. And sometimes we forget to make time to grieve, and we need to. So I'm going to turn it over to her, because I can keep talking. But Joella.
Good morning, everyone. As Rev. Sam just stated, I did just recently experience the loss of my dad. And the message that I would like to give today is navigating grief and loss. So my story right now is I'm grieving so many losses, actually. The loss of a cherished relationship, and with that, the kids that I had grown to know and love as my own. The home that I thought I would spend the rest of my life in. The life that I was starting to build with my family in its entirety. The sense of safety that I had within that home and within that family. And my dad's death. I'm not just grieving my dad's death as the loss of a father. I'm grieving my dad's death as the loss of the expectation that I held for what a relationship with a father should be. So my dad passed away on December 27th, which is one day after his 68th birthday. Throughout this last year, I made comments about how I didn't think he was going to, this would very likely be his last Christmas. And he made it 2 days past. My relationship with my dad had always been troubled. My dad was, growing up as a child, we lived in a very abusive home, and the relationship that I had with my dad was very troubled, very tumultuous. I sometimes feel as though that a lot of that had to do with the fact that I surpassed him early with regard to emotional maturity and, in some sense, intelligence. And I feel like maybe at some point he became intimidated of me. I challenged myself earlier this year, though, and stated that in order to find the healing and the closure that I wanted when he passed, that I was going to officiate his funeral. And I was going to add a healing aspect to that ceremony. what I got from that experience was completely different than what I expected. I heard stories of my dad from when he was a child and the neighbors, from their neighbors, and they talked about how sweet he was. An aunt that I connected with and bonded with while I was in Michigan for his funeral got up and told stories about how he experienced pain and abuse from his own dad, and that how he joined the Marines to make my grandfather mad because my grandfather was a legacy Army man. I heard stories about how he was a great athlete and how he was really protective of his siblings. In 2020, my dad was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver from a lifetime of drinking. A week later, his trailer burned down. And there was a local church where members of the congregation stepped in to help him and my stepmom rebuild. And then they continued to bring them food boxes once a week, and my dad at that point and my stepmom started going to church and getting to know the people of the congregation. There was a couple from that congregation that showed up at his funeral and talked of how sweet and caring he was and how they really enjoyed his company. It was in those moments of hearing those stories of his childhood and how he was in the last bit of his life that I was able to humanize him. Because all of these years, he had been the villain in my story. And seeing him from a place of being a human who was troubled and who had faced his own difficulties that were not of his making allowed me to view him and his life on a level that was more equal, that felt more equal to mine. I had a dream the other morning, and in the dream, my dad was there, which I feel that was his way of coming to me and talking to me. And he said that he was sorry and that he left me a gift, which I found out at the funeral he did, a very powerful gift. Part of my grief with my dad is also in the fact that I didn't feel like I really ever had a positive father or dad role model in my life. And I struggled for many years to find family. Which gives a little bit more perspective to the losing the cherished relationship and the and losing the children that went along with it, because I viewed them as the first family that I'd really felt. Like that cherished relationship, that partner and his kids felt like the first family that I really felt a part of. And thank you. And as Reb Sam had mentioned, about, not everybody has their lives together, or, sometimes your life is just a wreck. Mine kind of feels like that right now. I'm in so much transition. 3 days after we got home from the funeral, I packed up the home that I had known and moved myself and my 3 kids in with a friend. And life as we knew it was completely disrupted. The other loss, I guess you could say, that I'm experiencing is the loss of expectations for what I thought my life was going to be like. Grief can be difficult and stressful, and nearly everybody goes through it at some point in their lives, and everybody experiences grief in different ways. So far, I haven't really, because of everything that is in transition, I haven't had a chance to really sit down and feel into my grief yet. Reading, some things, some ideas for this message today, one of the things that I came across was grief was a way of lifting the heaviness of the expectations that you set for your life, so that you can open yourself up to a new journey. Sadness and depression are natural parts of grief. And I've had moments, but I haven't had a chance to really sit down and feel into it. Sadness and depression can lead to, once you realize you have this loss, that can lead to isolating yourself while you reflect on the things you did with your loved ones, or focusing on memories. I haven't had that opportunity yet because there's so much that so many people depend on me for. With grief, you could find that you're also in a state of shock or denial or disbelief, and maybe that's where I'm at. It's natural for our minds to try to protect us from pain. So following loss, some people may feel that they feel numb, or may find that they feel numb about what has happened. I don't think that's actually where I'm at. I definitely don't feel numb. But feeling numb can help us process what's happened at a pace that we can manage. And, sorry, I have displaced my tablet, so I'm working with old-fashioned paper today. And it helps to be able to process it when we are ready. This can be a helpful stage, but the only problem with being numb, the only problem being is, let me try to skip. The only problem with feeling numb is that it can cause us to feel stuck or frozen. I'm really butchering this. I'm going to take a second to just kind of pause. So like I had mentioned earlier, not only does loss look like the loss of a loved one, it can also look like the loss of expectations. And Brene Brown says expectations are resentments waiting to happen. I can attest to that wholeheartedly. I don't feel like this means we can't have expectations, or that we lower our expectations, or we have no opinion or purpose, or we stop dreaming. But if you take a moment to notice that the expectations for your life are not. But take a moment to notice that expectations for your life is what causes a lot of suffering. So what exactly should your life look like? What is it supposed to look like? What is supposed to happen? What is not supposed to happen? These expectations set you up for what you believe to happen in your life, and the reality of it is, if your expectations are shattered, it probably hasn't happened. When we imagine what our ideal life would be like, or set expectations based on that ideal, and then it doesn't pan out like we had envisioned, that can cause a kind of grieving when it doesn't work out the way we had planned. We think, this isn't how my life was supposed to turn out. This isn't how I imagined things to be. So what are some things that we can do to prevent this from being our way of life? When we soften our expectations, we find it easier to perceive reality as it is, not what our imagination has made it into. We then aren't continually shocked or outraged or bitterly disappointed when life doesn't go as planned. Up until the point of my dad's funeral, I had been preparing for that moment when he passed because of what I had planned it would look like. I figured that it would look like a big mass of emotions and like anger and bitterness for the life that I had lived with him a part of it. But instead, I actually walked away from it with a bigger sense of love and appreciation. When a bird flies 1,000 miles, it catches air currents in its wings. It hasn't formed exact ideas or imaginings as to the strength and location of those air currents. It just exists in that moment and adjusts to what is, and how that is ever changing. If a child is born with special needs and needs extra care, or if a spouse or partner falls ill and declines, and we now have the primary care of looking after them, or if we ourselves become sick or disabled, or a valued relationship ends, then there will be a natural sense of loss because we have lost something. It is entirely natural to be upset or sad or even angry during the adjustment period. And I can attest to all of those emotions. Pain and suffering with loss, or at least some suffering, is an inevitable part of life. But within that suffering, perhaps we can find something, whether it's unexpected help from others, which I am eternally grateful for, untapped strengths within ourselves. I have found much of that recently, or a new appreciation of life itself. I'm also navigating that. When we fight our reality, there comes a lot of suffering, a lot of struggle, a lot of turmoil because we are fighting against something that we cannot change. There are sometimes ways that a new way of living might seem bleak from the beginning, but out of that becomes the saving grace that we had been waiting for. The future isn't some promised land of perpetual love and money and health and happiness. It, like everything else that we find within ourselves, contains ever-revolving circumstances and ever-changing patterns of fortune for all of us. So what is grief exactly? Grief is a normal and natural response to loss. Though we often expect to grieve the death of a family member or friend, many other significant losses can also trigger grief. The end of a relationship, a move to a new community. A much anticipated opportunity or life goal is suddenly closed for us. The death of a pet, someone we love contracts a potentially life-threatening illness, and so much more. Grieving such losses is important because it allows us to free up energy that is bound to the lost person, lost object, or experience, so that we might reinvest that energy elsewhere. Until we grieve effectively, we are likely to find reinvesting difficult. It's a part of us that remains tied to the past. But grieving is not forgetting, nor is it drowning in tears, much to my dismay right now. Healthy grieving results in an ability to remember the importance of our loss, but with a newfound sense of peace rather than searing pain, like I found with my dad's funeral. No two people are likely to experience grief in the same way. The way we think and feel, the way our body functions, and the way we interact with others may all be affected. And some of the more common experiences may be difficulty concentrating or apathy, anger at those responsible, at the deceased, at ourselves, at God, or at any handy target. And there's always the guilt. If I had only done, you may lose sleep. You may have a loss of appetite. There's the possibility of withdrawal from others. You could be irritable, intense sadness or tears when a memory is triggered, numbness, loneliness, or a sense of separateness from others, and loss of life's meaning. Sometimes our reactions are so changeable, intense, or irrational that we fear we may be going crazy. Often grieving people are afraid to confront their grief for fear that if they open the door, they will be drowned in a flood of tears or rage. Though this is very unlikely, allowing others to help us in our grieving is good insurance that we will keep our balance. No matter what our intense experiences of grief may be, they are temporary. There is life after grief, if we acknowledge and work through our reactions rather than trying to stop them. Fortunately, much of the process of healthy grieving seems to be built into our genes. Acknowledging and growing from the losses is such a natural process that much of it will happen without our knowing. If we relax our expectations of how we should grieve and give up some of our need to be in control, there's a saying that a partner told me that I kind of hold on to when I put things out there of how I should do things. And it's, thou shall not should yourself. Healthy grieving is an active process. It is not true that you just need to give it more time, or you just need to give it time. One way of understanding the work to be done is to think of grieving as a series of tasks we need to complete, not necessarily in sequence. The first being to accept the finality of loss, to acknowledge and express the full range of feelings we experience as a result of the loss, to adjust to a life in which the lost person, object, or experience is absent, to say goodbye, to ritualize our movement to a new peace with the loss. What I have found with all of the loss that I've experienced over the last month and a half is that good friends and family members, a supportive social circle can be amazingly helpful while doing this work. And you can also do a good deal of it yourself to help yourself. But I don't know what I would do without my social circle and my friends. They've been wonderful. The day that we did most of the moving of my stuff, I had friends there, and at any given moment I had a friend stopping me just for a hug, or just to hold me, or to hand me food or water and make sure that I was taking care of myself. I don't know what I would have done without that. Active, healthy grieving requires balance. Balancing the time you spend directly working on your grief with the time you spend coping with your day-to-day life. And there's not a perfect solution to that, because I am still trying to navigate that balance. Balancing the amount of time you spend with others is the time versus the time you spend alone. Balancing seeking help from others with caring for yourself. Focusing too strongly on any single side of these pairings could just knock it off course. And just a reminder that grieving is an active process. It takes energy that will likely have to be temporarily withdrawn from the usual pursuits of your life. I know for me, I'm typically very, I typically spend a lot of time in my social circles. And I've found a lot more lately that I am declining the offers to come out and socialize, just because I don't really have the energy to put forward in those circles at this point. Treat yourself with the same care and tolerance and affection you would extend to a valued friend in a similar situation. One of the things that I appreciate being able to think through is if I'm having an especially hard day and if I'm being really hard on myself, it helps for me to look at that from an outside perspective and think of it as a cherished friend going through that, and what advice would I give them in that moment. But with all of that, please be gentle with yourself. Expect that you are not going to have the same energy levels or the same mind space, bandwidth, or consistency that you would normally have. This one is really hard for me. Try to avoid taking on new responsibilities or making major life transitions. My problem is then taking on new responsibilities, because a lot of times I don't know how to say no. Talk regularly about your grief and your memories with someone you trust. I am almost positive that my friend circle is probably really tired of hearing me talk about the things I am going through. But I am grateful for the grace they are showing me. Be attentive to your healthy eating and sleeping patterns. I have found, especially during the most stressful times, that I eat junk. And I'm finding now that my face is breaking out and I feel more sluggish, and my body just doesn't like me right now. And that's because I haven't been eating the best that I can. Journaling has been my life-saving grace. Anyway, my saving grace. Journaling has helped a lot. Read. I have a lot of books that I'm delving into right now. Allow yourself to enjoy some good times without guilt. I was able to attend a partner's housewarming party last night, and we drank kava, like kava tea, and played games and just had a good time, and it felt really good to be in that space in that moment. Carry something with you that feels like it's a linking object to you and that person or that memory, something that symbolically reminds you of them. And then anticipate a time in the future when you will no longer need to carry that reminder and gently let it go. Tell the people around you what helps and what doesn't. Most people would likely would help you more often if they knew how. Take warm, leisurely baths, get a massage. Set aside a time specifically every day to remember and experience whatever feelings arise with that memory. Choose your entertainment carefully. Choose what you absorb. Some movies and TV shows or books can intensify already strong feelings. Plan ahead for special days or holidays. Pray, take a yoga class, connect on the internet with support groups. Vent. Vent whenever you can. Get that anger out of your body. Do something in nature. Do something to help someone else. And write down the lessons that you learn. Grieving has a lot to teach you. Something else that you can do is to write down what you expected your marriage to look like, your family to look like, your life. These are layers of grief that we might hold on to because maybe it looks different than what you expected. And maybe it's not like how you thought it would be. And when you can allow space for that sadness, acknowledging that this is not how you expected your life to be, you can absolutely allow yourself to be in that space of grieving the loss of the expectation of how you thought it would be. And when you're in that turmoil, notice if you're putting a bunch of garbage on top of that turmoil with thoughts like, why is this so hard? What's wrong with me? Things that it significantly increase the pain. What if you could just allow yourself to be present in the emotion that you're feeling now, without resistance, without judgment, without shame? Just allowing yourself to be exactly where you are at. Allow yourself to feel the pain that your life has not gone the way you thought it would. And allow yourself to acknowledge that you're hurt, that you're in pain. But nothing can ever change. The biggest lesson that I'm learning right now, nothing can ever change until you find some sort of acceptance for where you are right now. Start with exactly where you're at, being in this moment, acknowledging the pain you have and the expectations you had. Expectations are not always bad. Just be aware of what they are and notice if they're causing you undue suffering. And notice if you're ready to change those expectations of yourself, of your grief, of your life, whatever it is. Like me with, holding on to that expectation that my dad, or that feeling that my dad was the villain, and then finding out that he was just troubled. This doesn't mean you have to lower your expectations, but notice if you can find room for them to shift in any way. So when we start to feel moments of true happiness, we seem to feel moments of true happiness, not when we are continually getting what it is that we thought we wanted, but when we solve problems by not getting the things that we wanted. Having these problems and working around them may be the key ingredients to a happier life, as long as the problems can be negotiated effectively. When we are sitting with ourselves going over how we expected to live, it would be beneficial to consider what we were expecting. and to check out perhaps how realistic it really was. In those moments, we should then consider our most basic emotional needs and how we still need to meet those needs, and try to find that in the most balanced way possible, given the new circumstances we are now adapting to. And to also give ourselves the encouragement that we can rise to the challenge of this new situation. And throughout this process, rest and self-care are critically important. So in conclusion, I just want to say that navigating grief and loss is a very personal journey, and no one can dictate how long it takes or the ways in which you choose to honor that loss. Grieving is not linear. It is not something that one day you feel it and the next day you don't. Some days it will feel like you moved on, and other days it will feel like you've got a fire in your throat and you can't stop the tears. But no matter what that feels like today, please know that you are not alone, and that there are others that will walk beside you on this journey. Take some deep, cleansing breaths and a moment to recognize where you are in your healing journey, and be present with how you feel now, and be gentle with yourself. This is not a race to see who heals the fastest. It is, however, a way to care for your most precious relationship, the one you have with you. And I would like to end this with a pagan prayer for peace. Divine Mother, Mother Divine, show me the way, give me a sign. Earth Mother, giver of life, strengthen me during my lifelong strife. Teach me your ways of perfect love, peace, and wisdom true. Spawn from my purest heart these words to you. May this prayer help me to better myself in word and deed. To a higher plane I shall succeed. Beautiful light of goodness fair, lore of old we both do share. A witch's brew I drink to you, my love for you day by day, or my love for you by day, by night, in thought and in sight. Will my soul learn the meaning of this life again? Divine Mother, Mother Divine, show me the way, give me a sign. Rev Sam, did you have anything that you would like to add?
Thank you, Joella. These are the hard messages to speak because they come from our heart, come from our soul, come from the raw part of us, not the performance part of us. And it's easy to perform. That's the easy part. It's difficult to be raw and open. So keep Joella in your thoughts and prayers. She's actually here in the office now, so she's babysitting me. And there's lots of good snacks here now. So, and not just energy bars, which is what I brought, but now there's lots of good healthy snacks and nuts and fruits and teas, and so if you need to come in and just spend some time with us, or just come in and just spend some time alone, just being here in the chapel. This is a great place of quiet and peace and comfort, and if you need us, we're always here during the day. So anyway, so just want to encourage you to continue on with us, and always want to welcome you to join us on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook page, and remind you to share this, share it out there, subscribe to it, be a part of everything that we're doing. That's important here at Amazing Love Sanctuary. If you want to join us in person, there's plenty of room. So there's open chairs every single Sunday. We're not trying to build a kingdom here. We're just doing what we do, and if you're content to just be at home and watch this in your private moments, great. Just share it and make sure that you continue to support us and be a part of what we're doing. I'll put it out there because we really suck at this, asking for money, but we do need your help, and I can't even remember the last time somebody sent money to us, but there is a link somewhere in our Facebook page. Joella can dig it up, I think, and bring it up front. So if you want to QR code it into our PayPal account, you're more than welcome to share this. It all goes to this ministry. It doesn't go into our pockets. It just keeps us moving forward and going forward. So we want to just pray for a number of people that are kind of in our midst, in our circle of influence. Tracy, who spoke with us last Easter, her father passed away, and so she was leaving on Friday, going to Austin to be a part of her father's funeral and probably do exactly what you did. So we want to pray for Tracy. Tomorrow we have a family gathering here that we really don't know. They just found us and want us to officiate a funeral for their father who passed. So we want to remember the Fernandez family that's will be here tomorrow in our chapel. So I think that's about it, but we're always here. You're always welcome to join us on Sundays at 10:30. We fire up the coffee pot. There's a ton of tea. So Joella brought her passion for tea into the space, into the offices, and I'll always have the cheapest coffee you can find. So I always tell people when they look at the coffee that I buy, and I was like, I've been in church life for 40 years, and in churches we always bought the cheapest coffee we could buy. So anything is better than U-Ban. We don't even have U-Ban.
But we have plenty of Folgers now too. It's in the freezer.
We have tons of Folgers. I love Folgers. There's lots of coffee. So anyway, we'll easily make a cup of coffee, and we'll share, and we'll laugh, and we'll cry, and we'll spend some time together and pray together. And if you need help during times of grief, we're always here to support you in your time of grief. It's really, I think, one of the most difficult things to do is find a place to grieve and someone to grieve with you. And thankfully, Joella has expressed a network of people that have supported her and encouraged her. So anyway, I hope you have a great week. There's so much going on all the time. Remember Tyree Nichols this week. Speak his name throughout the week, and I think we'll be positive about that. I think that's all we've got. So, yeah. God bless you. See you all next Sunday. There you go. Joella's going to go get us offline. There we go.